Everyone swore this neighborhood was safe, until a so-called HOA cop shoved a gun in my wife's face. Safe? Try humiliating, try terrifying, try realizing that someone you never seen before suddenly decided they owned your life. I can still feel the way my hands trembled so hard that night, nearly dropping my phone while dialing 911. And through it all, he just kept barking out fake laws, fake rules, fake authority. It felt like a bad play we'd been dragged into, unwilling actors in a performance that was anything but make-believe. The night started ordinary, Tuesday in October. Grocery bags in the back seat, headlights painting long shadows across the gated entrance. Jessica was laughing about something small, her way of making even the dullest errands feel light. We had no warning that our welcome home would turn into something out of a nightmare. From the darkness by the gatehouse, he stepped forward. Tall, maybe 6'2". A tactical vest clung to his chest, radios and gear clipped at sharp angles, a badge glinting just enough to confuse your eyes. At first glance, you'd think official, but something about the stance, the swagger, it didn't line up. My stomach dropped. I hate confrontation, always have, but when a man plants himself in front of your car with a weapon resting on his hip, you don't get to decide if you're brave or not. "Hold up there," he said, raising one hand like he owned the road. The other rested on the holster, not casually, deliberately. My pulse spiked. "I'm Blake Calloway with HOA Security. Identification now." The way he said it clipped, mechanical, rehearsed, as if he'd practiced in front of a mirror. But it wasn't just his words that rattled me, it was Jessica's sudden change. I've been married to her long enough to notice the smallest shifts, the slow inhale, the 4-second pause, the measured exhale. Most people would think she was just calming herself. I knew better. That was Jessica assessing, calculating. And something about the way her eyes flicked over his gear made my chest tighten. "Police authority under HOA Ordinance 714, Blake announced, tapping his badge with pride. It was almost comical, if not for the very real gun strapped at his side. Jessica's lips tightened. I didn't know it yet, but in her mind, the word felony was already flashing red. She could spot a fake badge in half a second, and this one was missing everything that mattered. I thumbed my phone against my thigh, activating the doorbell cam remotely. Record everything. My voice shook as I asked him to clarify his jurisdiction. He repeated the same line, "I have police authority in this community." That was the moment my wife's eyes changed. A look I've only seen twice in my life, the one where she's no longer listening as a civilian, but analyzing like a soldier. He pressed the radio on his shoulder and muttered into it. "Unit Bravo conducting verification at main entrance." Static followed, fake dispatch chatter, official-sounding nonsense. Jessica tilted her head the way she does when she's dissecting sound. Later, she told me the frequencies were wrong. Civilians aren't allowed to use those channels. He wasn't just pretending. He was committing federal crimes in real time. I whispered into my phone, speaking as quietly as I could. "There's a man with a weapon claiming police authority without credentials. I need immediate officers." The dispatcher didn't hesitate. Sirens were already on the way. Blake didn't expect that. I'll never forget his face when the wails echoed closer. The fake confidence drained instantly, replaced by panic. "This can be handled internally," he stammered, backing toward his car. "No need for outside involvement." But we had it all, his words, his badge, his threats, caught on video. Jessica's whisper chilled me. Someone gave him permission to do this. She was right. People don't just buy tactical gear, memorize fake ordinances, and start pointing guns at residents on a Tuesday night. Someone in authority had put him here. Someone in our own community. That thought kept me awake until sunrise. And here's the thing about sleepless nights. They make you reckless. The next morning, I did something that seemed small, something that felt like common sense. I picked up the HOA handbook, dialed the insurance broker listed inside, and calmly reported an incident with a contractor. I didn't know it then, but that one phone call was the first domino. The first crack in a dam holding back something far uglier than one fake cop at a gate. Because when insurance companies hear the words armed impersonation of law enforcement, they don't just take notes. They send investigators, and investigators dig until they uncover everything. They told us to keep calm. But how do you stay calm when you realize one person's mistake could cost an entire neighborhood their homes? The insurance broker's voice changed the second I said the words armed impersonation of law enforcement. Papers shuffled. Her tone shifted from polite to urgent, like I had just pulled a fire alarm through the phone. That's when I realized this wasn't a minor incident anymore. I hadn't just reported a trespasser. I detonated a bomb in the middle of our community's finances. "Mr. Mitchell," she said sharply, "that creates massive exposure. If contractors are claiming police authority while armed, your community could face coverage termination. You'll need to prepare for an emergency survey." Emergency survey. 3 bland words that meant something catastrophic. Investigators would descend on us, picking apart every contract, every authorization, every decision the HOA board had made. And if they found one wrong move, coverage could vanish. No coverage means no mortgages, and no mortgages means foreclosure. By Thursday, our quiet neighborhood looked like a panic zone. Patricia, our HOA president, called an emergency meeting in the community center. Residents flooded in with papers in hand, mortgage documents, insurance notices, questions they couldn't answer. Voices clashed, bouncing off the walls. "We could lose our homes," Mrs. Henderson cried out, clutching her folder like it was a life raft. Patricia stood at the front, hands trembling as she held the insurance letter. "This is an overreaction," she insisted, her voice wavering. "We can handle this internally. Blake was misunderstood, a communication problem, that's all." But no one was buying it, not after watching him wave a gun and bark fake ordinances. Why was she so desperate to call it a misunderstanding? Why defend him at all? Residents demanded answers. Who hired this company? Who signed off on them carrying weapons? Why did he think he had police authority? Patricia dodged every question. Her face flushed, words stumbling as if she was searching for the right excuse in real time. Then Mr. Daniels from the corner unit stood. His voice cut through the shouting. "You signed that contract personally, didn't you, Patricia?" The room froze. "My cousin works at the county office. He saw your name on the Sentinel authorization papers, your signature, not the board." Gasps rippled like a shockwave. Patricia's eyes widened. Her lips parted, but no sound came at first. Then stammering, brittle words. I don't know what documents he thinks he saw. Board decisions are collective, always collective." But the crack in her voice gave her away. Everyone heard it. Everyone saw her hands shake harder. Phones came up recording. Neighbors whispered to each other, "She's lying." And just like that, Patricia wasn't our leader anymore. She was the suspect. That night, emails started flying. Patricia sent desperate reassurances, long messages trying to rewrite the story. Blake wasn't impersonating police. He was misunderstood. He wasn't dangerous. He was trained. He wasn't a criminal, just committed to protecting us. But her words rang hollow, and her explanations sounded like rehearsed legal strategy, not community concern. The insurance company didn't care about her spin. Within 72 hours, they sent official notice. A loss control survey was coming. Translation: investigators were on their way to rip through every contract, every authorization, every safety measure. Jessica read the notice silently, her jaw tightening. "They'll find everything," she said quietly, more to herself than to me. Her tone wasn't relief, it was warning. Because Jessica knew something no one else did. Blake wasn't acting alone. You don't impersonate law enforcement in front of cameras without believing someone powerful will shield you. And if Patricia had signed that contract, then this wasn't negligence. It was conspiracy. I tried to sleep that night, but the images wouldn't leave me. Blake's fake badge, Patricia's panicked denials, Jessica's steady breathing as she analyzed details no one else could see. It was all swirling together into a picture I couldn't fully understand yet. But I knew one thing, this wasn't over. And I was about to find out just how deep the rot went. Because the next evening, Jessica made a discovery that froze the blood in my veins. It started as her usual habit. She calls it a perimeter assessment, walking the property line, scanning the environment, listening to the static on her radio scanner. To anyone else, it might look paranoid. To me, it was just Jessica being Jessica. Delta Force or not, she never lost the instincts drilled into her bones. She paused suddenly, tightening her grip on the scanner. Static, then chatter, strange, clipped codes, voices pretending to sound official. At first she thought it was kids with walkie-talkies, but no child plays with those frequencies. Her face hardened. "Aaron," she whispered, pulling me closer, "they're broadcasting on emergency channels." I blinked. "What does that mean?" "It means," she said flatly, "they're not just playing fake cop. They're interfering with real emergency responders. If there's a fire, if there's a crash, radios go silent. People could die." I stared at her, my wife, my steady anchor. But in that moment I saw something else in her eyes, fury, calculation, and something darker, fear, not for herself, but for all of us. Because what she was hearing in the static wasn't just fraud. It was the sound of organized crime hiding under the mask of neighborhood security. And she knew this was only the beginning. The static crackled again, and Jessica froze. Her shoulders locked, her head tilted just slightly, like a predator catching a scent. I'd seen that look before, but never in the suburbs, never with our neighbors just across the street walking their dogs. She pressed the scanner to her ear, lips tightening, eyes narrowing. Then came the words that made my stomach twist. Directive P, authorized enhanced enforcement protocols. Cold-clipped official. And yet not official at all. Jessica's hand gripped mine so tight my knuckles ached. "That wasn't play acting," she whispered. "That was a command. Someone with real authority is running this." Her tone was steady, but her eyes betrayed what she rarely admitted, fear. These weren't just rent-a-cops pretending to play soldier. They were coordinated, following coded orders. And the worst part? They were using emergency frequencies to do it. That's when Jessica turned to me, her voice dropping into something colder, something professional. "Aaron, if fire crews rolled into this neighborhood right now, their radios would cut out. They'd hear nothing but static." I blinked, not fully understanding at first. She leaned closer. "Do you get it? If someone's house burns, if a kid chokes and paramedics come, their coordination dies right here in our streets." It was bigger than intimidation. Bigger than HOA disputes. This was federal-level crime, and Jessica knew it. She started documenting, meticulous as always. Logs of times, frequencies, patterns, transmissions that matched no legal protocol. "This isn't random interference," she muttered. "It's systematic." But even as she logged, her jaw clenched tighter. Because for Jessica, there was another problem. She wasn't just a resident. She wasn't just my wife. She was still active Delta Force. And exposure, any exposure, could compromise everything. That's when the real dilemma hit us. Report it and risk Jessica's background being dragged into federal investigation. Stay silent and risk people dying when radios fail during a crisis. There was no safe path, only dangerous choices. The next morning, Danger showed up wearing paper. Mrs. Henderson caught me by the mailboxes, arms full of delayed packages. She wasn't alone. Half the neighborhood was there, packages in hand, phones recording, voices raised. Notices were taped to the cluster boxes, claiming mail delivery was suspended, pending security investigation. But the words were wrong, the formatting was wrong, and the spelling errors childish. "They're fake," I said quietly, scanning the paper. "Only the U.S. Postal Service can restrict delivery, and these," I tapped the notice, "these are forgeries, which means someone just committed federal obstruction." The crowd erupted, phones shot higher, streaming live. "They're stealing our mail," someone shouted. "That's not just letters, that's medicine, checks, bills." And then Patricia arrived. Her face was tight, her eyes darting, her voice straining for calm. "Please, everyone, this is a misunderstanding. We'll resolve the delivery situation through proper channels." But the residents had tasted blood. "Proper channels?" a younger man yelled, pointing his phone right at her. "This is criminal. Look at the spelling errors. Look at the fake stamps." His live chat scrolled in bright red hearts and angry emojis. "Thousands are watching right now. Patricia, explain this." Her cheeks went pale. She tried again to control the narrative, to frame it as miscommunication. But then the mail carrier himself pulled up. He looked at the notice, shook his head, and said the words that sealed her fate. "This is fake. We didn't issue this. Obstructing mail is a federal crime." The crowd roared. Phones buzzed with confirmation emails as neighbors filed official USPS obstruction reports right there on the sidewalk. Elderly residents leaned on me for help navigating the online forms, while kids cheered like it was a block party. Patricia's face told the story. The denial, the panic, the dawning horror as she realized the situation had slipped past her control. Clips were going viral in real time. Her hands shook as she pleaded, "Please, this is being blown out of proportion." But nobody listened, because truth was louder now. That night, Jessica sat at the kitchen table, the scanner still beside her. Her notes spread out like classified files. She looked up at me, her face carved with tension. "Aaron, this isn't just fake cops or stolen mail. This is a system, communications jamming, mail obstruction, authorization from inside the HOA. This isn't neighborhood theater, it's organized crime." Her words sank like a stone in my chest, because I realized something I hadn't dared admit. Blake wasn't just some wannabe in a vest. Patricia wasn't just a panicked board president. This was deliberate, coordinated. Someone somewhere had built an entire operation on our street, and we had just tripped over it. The question wasn't whether the system existed. We had proof. The question was, how far would it go before someone got killed? The first scream came from a child. Not a scream of injury, of panic. Small fists pounding glass doors that wouldn't open. A mother tugging frantically at handles locked by unseen magnets. And neighbors rushing forward, realizing that if this were a real fire, those children would already be dead. That was the moment our neighborhood woke up. It started hours earlier, almost casually. Fire Marshal Thompson rolled in with a compact red vehicle, clipboard in hand. "Routine safety assessment," he explained. His tone was clipped professional. But there was something in his eyes, a quiet suspicion, that told me he didn't trust our neat landscaping and painted curbs. He pointed at Sentinel's new bollards and barriers. "Let's see if emergency vehicles can actually get through." Engines hummed, tires turned, and 30 feet later the vehicle ground to a halt. The barriers, shiny and official-looking, blocked every angle. Reverse, forward, side approach, nothing worked. Phones went up immediately. Neighbors recorded from sidewalks, gasping, murmuring. One elderly voice cracked the silence. "If that was an ambulance, we'd already be gone." And then came the evacuation drill. Thompson's stopwatch clicked as volunteers rushed toward the community center exit. Families, children, an elderly man with a cane. It should have been straightforward. But Sentinel's modifications weren't designed for safety. They were designed for control. The doors wouldn't budge. Magnets held them shut, locks that had no manual override. The mother screamed, pulling until her hands went red. The kids pounded on the glass, eyes wide, tears streaking their cheeks. Neighbors sprinted, slamming shoulders into the doors, searching for keys that didn't exist. Panic surged through the crowd as realization spread. We were trapped. Thompson dropped his clipboard, ran forward, and swiped his emergency release key. The doors hissed open. The family stumbled out, gasping, children clinging to their mother's waist. The stopwatch stopped. Silence fell. And then fury erupted. "Those doors could have killed us," someone shouted. "My grandkids play here every week," another cried. "You let this happen." Phones shook in the air, every angle catching every face. Patricia appeared then like she had rehearsed her entrance. She marched forward, chin high, eyes sharp, but her timing couldn't have been worse. "Enough of this circus," she snapped. "You're turning our safe community into a legal battleground. First insurance, now federal agencies, now fire code harassment. This coordinated attack will not stand." Her finger jabbed the air, at me. Dozens of eyes turned, dozens of phones zoomed in. And then she made her biggest mistake. She pulled out papers, legal documents. "I have attorneys. Harassment lawsuits are ready to file. Keep pushing this crusade and you'll find out how expensive it gets. Every resident who fuels this panic will face litigation." Her voice shook, not with authority, with desperation. The crowd didn't shrink back. They surged closer. Because who threatens their own neighbors with lawsuits after children nearly suffocate behind locked doors? The fire marshal's voice cut through the noise. Calm, precise, damning. These barriers violate multiple codes. Emergency access must be restored within 10 days. If not, this community will be red-tagged. Gasps rippled. Red-tagged meant one thing. During any fire, any medical emergency, first responders would treat our neighborhood as inaccessible, condemned, untouchable. 10 days, that was the clock. The crowd's panic shifted into something sharper, rage. Parents clutched their children tighter. Seniors steadied themselves on canes. Neighbors shouted over Patricia's protests, their voices filling the air with one message: we will not be silenced. That night I lay awake staring at the ceiling. Jessica beside me, breathing steady, her scanner glowing faintly in the dark. Patricia had shown her hand, threats instead of solutions, lawsuits instead of safety, desperation instead of leadership. And I couldn't stop thinking, if she was willing to wave papers while children cried, what would she do when real investigators showed up tomorrow? The morning felt too quiet. Clear skies, kids waiting at the bus stop, sprinklers hissing across perfect lawns. You'd never guess a storm was about to rip through our gates. But when 3 cars pulled up, one marked Insurance Safety Inspector, another with FCC decals, and a third unmarked with a government plate, that quiet shattered. The insurance investigator stepped out first, briefcase in hand, eyes scanning like a hawk. Then came the FCC field agent, carrying equipment bristling with antennas. Their presence alone made neighbors gather on sidewalks, whispering, recording. Patricia arrived seconds later, dragging her attorney like a shield. The lawyer wasted no time. "This is malicious harassment," he declared, his voice booming across the courtyard. "My client faces coordinated attacks, entrapment, malicious prosecution. We will pursue civil rights claims against every individual fueling this conspiracy." The word conspiracy echoed, almost ironic considering what was really happening. My stomach dropped. If he convinced people this was harassment, if he twisted our complaints into something illegal, we could all be buried under lawsuits. But then the FCC agent spoke, calm, professional, unshakable. "Sir, we're here because of documented interference with emergency frequencies," he said evenly. "This has nothing to do with HOA disputes. This is federal safety jurisdiction." Phones zoomed closer. Patricia's lawyer faltered, his argument collapsing against the weight of authority that didn't care about neighborhood politics. And that's when Blake appeared. Still in his tactical vest, still carrying himself like a man with power. He marched forward, placing himself between the FCC agent and his equipment. "Agents have no jurisdiction here," he barked. "Community sovereignty supersedes outside interference." The crowd gasped, the audacity, the delusion. He wasn't de-escalating, he was doubling down. The FCC agent tried to reason. "Sir, step aside. You are now obstructing a federal investigation." But Blake's hand went to his radio. "Unit Alpha, respond to interference situation. Immediate support for community sovereignty enforcement." The words were insane, but worse, they were recorded. Every phone, every camera, every microphone caught him calling for backup against federal agents. Neighbors whispered, eyes wide. Did he just declare war? The FCC agent's patience broke. "Sir, you are now committing obstruction of justice. Step away." But Blake didn't. He squared his shoulders, blocking equipment, physically preventing access. He thought he was untouchable. And then the sheriff's SUV rolled in. Deputy Torres stepped out. Real badge, real authority, real firearm. The atmosphere shifted instantly. Blake's chest puff deflated, his swagger cracked. "Sir," Torres commanded, voice sharp as steel. "Step away from personnel. You're under arrest for obstruction of investigation and impersonation of law enforcement." For the first time, Blake's eyes showed fear. His hand twitched toward his vest, but stopped. He knew better. Slowly, carefully, he stepped back, raising his hands. The cuffs clicked around his wrists, the metallic sound echoing across the courtyard. Neighbors erupted in whispers, phones capturing every second. The fake cop was finally being treated like the criminal he was. Patricia's attorney scrambled, spinning desperately. This is excessive enforcement, technical misunderstandings, not crimes. My clients acted to preserve safety. But Torres didn't even look at him. He tightened the cuffs, eyes locked on Blake. You can intimidate residents with fake authority, he said loud enough for every camera to catch. But you don't block federal agents. That's felony obstruction. The crowd murmured approval. Mrs. Henderson whispered, "Finally," her phone steady as she streamed. Patricia's face was pale, lips trembling, because Torres hadn't just arrested Blake. He'd said anyone who authorized these activities could face conspiracy charges. His words weren't aimed only at Blake. They were aimed at her. The illusion was gone, the armor of fake authority shattered. Blake wasn't a protector, he was a criminal in cuffs. Patricia wasn't a leader, she was a co-conspirator cornered by truth. And standing there, watching neighbors cheer as the sirens wailed, I realized this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. Because once federal investigators smell conspiracy, they don't stop until they've uncovered it all. Sometimes betrayal doesn't scream, it whispers through emails. The insurance ultimatum landed on a Monday morning. A certified letter heavy with consequence. Coverage terminated unless Sentinel was fired, fire code violations fixed in 10 days, and all contractor authority documented with proof. Without insurance, mortgages would collapse. Foreclosure would ripple like wildfire. By evening, panic filled the community center. Residents clutched the letter like it was a death notice. Phones buzzed, recording every second. Patricia stood at the front, papers in her hands, eyes darting between faces. Her usual authority was gone, replaced by something closer to desperation. "We need to discuss resolution," she began, voice thin. "Perhaps we can find mutually beneficial solutions." The crowd erupted. "Solutions," one man barked. "Our banks will foreclose without insurance." "This isn't about solutions," another woman shouted. "It's about your lies." Her words drowned in noise, fingers pointed, cameras zoomed. Patricia stammered, trying to recite prepared lines, but the room wasn't listening anymore. They were hunting truth. That's when Mrs. Henderson stood up, calm, steady, deadly. She lifted her phone, connected it to the projector, and the room went still as text appeared on the wall. Emails. Patricia's own words. Grant police-style authority for security personnel to ensure resident compliance. Use intimidation tactics if residents resist protocols. The crowd gasped, a collective intake of breath like a wave crashing. Shouts erupted instantly. "She authorized it. It's her signature." She told them to intimidate us. Patricia's face drained of color. "These are taken out of context," she stammered. "I never intended for laws to be broken." But the projection didn't care. Line after line scrolled across the wall, her own instructions, her own directives. Not miscommunication, not misunderstanding, intent. "You gave him authority to impersonate law enforcement," I said, standing, my voice sharper than I expected. "You put a gun in our faces, you endangered our children, and you lied." Phones rose higher, capturing her trembling hands, her wild eyes. "I only did what other communities already approved," she screamed suddenly, tears streaking down her cheeks. "This program exists in 3 other neighborhoods. We followed established protocols." Gasps again, louder this time. 3 other neighborhoods. The room erupted. She admitted it. "It's bigger than us. This is organized crime." Patricia's breakdown played out in front of dozens of witnesses. Every second recorded, every confession etched into digital memory. And in that moment, the story shifted. This wasn't just about one HOA. This wasn't about one fake cop or one desperate president. This was enterprise, multi-community, coordinated, federal. The chant started sharp and merciless. "Resign, resign, resign." Patricia's knees buckled as she clutched the podium. I didn't," but the words fell flat against the wall of anger. She tried to blame Blake. She tried to blame Sentinel, but the evidence glared from the wall, undeniable. This wasn't a rogue guard. This wasn't an accident. This was conspiracy signed in her own hand. The neighbors didn't just see her guilt. They felt her betrayal. The trust she had cashed like currency for years now lay in shreds on the floor. And in the silence that followed, as Patricia broke under the weight of her own words, a truth crystallized. This wasn't the end of the nightmare. It was proof the nightmare stretched far beyond our gates. Because if 3 other neighborhoods had the same program, how many families were living under the same shadow, unaware that their leaders had sold them into criminal control? And if Patricia had been so willing to risk all of us, how many others were doing the same, right now, in communities just like ours? The knock at the door wasn't from a neighbor. It was from the FBI. By then, Patricia's confession had already lit a fuse across our community. Emails projected on the wall, witnesses streaming live, every denial crumbling into evidence. But even as the HOA president tried to gather her shredded dignity, something larger was already in motion. 3 days later, the broadcast began. We gathered in the community center, folding chairs in rows, Mrs. Henderson's big TV wheeled to the front. Neighbors clutched coffee cups, faces tense, phones ready to record. It felt less like a meeting and more like a verdict. The news anchor appeared, voice solemn. Breaking news. FBI announces charges in multi-district HOA conspiracy spanning 4 states. Gasps, whispers, some residents covered their mouths. Others cheered before the footage even rolled. On the screen, agents marched out of Sentinel Security's office carrying box after box of evidence. Radios, forged notices, contract files stacked high. Behind them, evidence boards displayed images we knew too well: Blake's fake badge, Patricia's emails, the mail obstruction notices. Our nightmare blown up on national TV. Then came Special Agent Martinez, standing behind a podium, cameras flashing. Behind her, poster boards detailed the conspiracy like crime scene exhibits. She didn't waste time with pleasantries. Today we announce federal charges against a criminal enterprise that infiltrated homeowner associations across 4 states, she said, her voice cut like a blade. This conspiracy systematically impersonated law enforcement, obstructed mail, and interfered with emergency communications, endangering thousands of families. The room erupted, cheers, gasps, tears. People hugged each other, clapping through trembling hands. And then there he was, Blake, shackled in an orange jumpsuit, head down, no swagger, no vest, just a criminal in cuffs, shuffled past cameras like the fraud he was. Neighbors who had once feared him now laughed bitterly. "Not so tough without your fake badge, are you?" someone muttered. Patricia appeared briefly in the footage, ducking her face behind a folder. But there was no hiding. Her pale hands shook as reporters shouted questions, cameras flashing like gunfire. Her fall was public, undeniable, humiliating. The charges scrolled across the screen like a grocery list of destruction: impersonating law enforcement, obstruction of justice, communications fraud, conspiracy, reckless endangerment. But the words that hit hardest weren't the charges, they were the numbers. Over 40 communities were compromised, Agent Martinez announced. Millions of dollars in fraudulent contracts, thousands of residents placed at risk. Our mouths hung open. 40, not 4, not 10, 40. Patricia hadn't just betrayed us. She had been a cog in a machine that preyed on families everywhere. The anchor returned, summarizing. Federal prosecutors confirm RICO charges may be applied, treating the conspiracy as organized crime. Neighbors erupted again, this time louder, triumphant. Someone popped a soda can, the fizz punctuating the cheers like champagne at a victory party. Jessica stood beside me, arms folded, eyes steady. She didn't cheer, she didn't smile, she just watched. Her Delta Force training wouldn't let her celebrate until the mission was truly over. But me, I felt something I hadn't in months: relief, vindication. The weight lifting as I realized we hadn't imagined this nightmare. We weren't crazy, we weren't paranoid, we were right, and now the world knew it too. The segment ended with the image of Patricia's attorney reading a shaky statement. "My client accepts responsibility for certain decisions and will cooperate fully with investigators." Behind him, Patricia stood like a ghost, every trace of her control gone. Neighbors clapped again, some wiping tears. Mrs. Henderson leaned close, whispering, "We did it, Aaron, we actually did it." But I couldn't shake one thought, even in that moment of victory. We had cut off one head of the Hydra, but how many more were out there, slithering through gated communities, hiding behind fake badges and desperate leaders? For now, though, we had justice, and justice, though late, felt like sunlight finally breaking through storm clouds. 6 months later, the gates still stood. Same iron bars, same stone pillars, same shadows stretching across the pavement at dusk. But something had changed, something you could feel in the air. Children ran to the bus stop without tripping over illegal barriers. The fire lane stood clear, red paint bright and unblocked. Mail arrived on time again. No fake notices, no delays, no stolen packages. Life looked the same, but it was safer, because the people who thought they owned us were gone. Federal prosecutors had built airtight cases. Blake was behind bars, stripped of his fake authority, his vest traded for orange cloth. Patricia's name was etched into court dockets, her emails read aloud in hearings as neighbors nodded grimly in the gallery. She was no longer the voice at the front of the room. She was just another defendant in chains. The FBI called it the HOA conspiracy, but to us it had been survival. Insurance coverage returned after compliance inspections. New board elections filled the room with faces we could trust. Transparency requirements were passed, oversight committees formed. No more secret contracts, no more shadow deals. We rebuilt not just fences and paperwork, but trust. I remember one afternoon standing by the gate as Jessica walked up beside me. Kids' laughter floated down the street, a ball bouncing off a curb. She watched silently for a moment, her posture softening. Then she whispered, just for me, "Mission complete, and nobody even knew Delta was here." I smiled, but inside I exhaled the breath I'd been holding for months. Her cover was intact. Her name never once surfaced in reports, never appeared in broadcasts. The community saw her as my wife, calm and steady, not the warrior who had caught codes in static and spotted fakes in the dark. She had saved us all without ever revealing who she really was. That's the part no one saw, the part I'll always carry quietly. When a fake cop pulled a gun, he pointed it at a Delta Force operator still active, still lethal, still watching. And he never even knew it. Maybe that's the irony of it all. Sometimes the strongest people hide in plain sight, living quietly, carrying the weight of their training like a shadow. The neighbors never knew how close they came to disaster. They only saw the fallout, the lawsuits, the arrests, the news broadcasts. But Jessica and I knew the truth. The danger wasn't just one man in a vest. It was a system, spreading like roots through communities across the country. And though justice had arrived, it was clear to us both. The fight was bigger than one neighborhood. Still, victory mattered. It mattered that our children could run without fear, that our seniors could sleep without wondering if fake cops would bang on their doors, that our mail would come, our doors would open, our alarms would mean safety, not control. And that victory came not from silence, but from exposure. From cameras rolling, from neighbors refusing to look away, from ordinary people daring to say, "Enough." Sometimes silence protects corruption. Sometimes it feeds it, lets it grow, makes it stronger. But truth, even messy, terrifying, exhausting truth, has the power to save entire communities. That's what we learned, that's what we lived. And maybe that's what you should take from this story too. Because wherever you are, behind your own gates in your own quiet neighborhood, the same shadows can creep in. And the only thing that stops them isn't fear, it's light. Keep your cameras rolling, keep your questions sharp, guard your homes and your families like peace depends on it. Because sometimes it really does. You've heard this confession, now wait until you hear the next one, the truth that shatters everything you thought you knew.